Could one IT nerd actually beat the best geeks in the world in a hacking competition? Hacker teams from Google, a stand-in for BlackRock, or a fictional team with a name that's either based on great research or just the best Japanglish coincidence ever? As a real-life code monkey for the financial industry, my answer is, it depends. Trillion Game is the story of how Haru and Gaku go from broke college grads to two of the richest people on the planet. Episodes 3 through 5 are noted by Gaku, the aforementioned nerd, as having been the first major hurdle towards obtaining venture capital investment. How? By showing off his elite hacking skills, of course. Something he'd downplay and his company hype man Haru would pump up. That's kind of their relationship. This is the second video in a series covering the dramaturgical background of Trillion Game, and don't be afraid of that erudite term. Dramaturgy is just the pedantic word for talking about a story's production history and authors, the context of the story's setting, and explaining the meanings of anything the plot revolves around. In this case, the world of finance and information technology. If you want some dramaturgical examples explored in the first 2 episodes, click the little pop-up thingy for my first installment. For this one, we'll get into how realistic the events of the Security Championship are. The first thing I'll point out is hacking contests actually exist, and that the anime definitely borrowed concepts and plot twists from those, and maybe even an episode of Silicon Valley. First, a recap of what led to episode 3. Gaku, a computer science enthusiast, gets turned down for a job at Dragon Bank, while Haru, a childhood friend and guy with +5 charisma, somehow bluffs his way into a position. Haru flips the Wall Street bird to Dragon Bank though, starting a company with Gaku instead. After overplaying their hand with one investor and being denied by half a dozen others, they get a call from Kiri. Princess Kiri, a talented Dragon Bank nepo baby in the same tier as Sabrina Carpenter and Billie Eilish, but for finance instead of music. She sat in on their interviews at Dragon Bank and wants them as her own little Shark Tank acquisition, flopping 100 million yen on the table, about 650k as of this recording, and episode 3 through 5 spoilers start Round 1, fight! Now. But why do they need to enter a security championship at all? Well, Kiri's interest makes Haru wave a red flag. There's a catch to this tidy sum of money. Kiri wants 51% ownership, effectively leashing Haru and Gaku permanently. Which leads me to my first dramaturgical hang-up. Specifically, the English dub. Haru spits out that Kiri isn't an angel investor, meaning someone that invests in a startup in exchange for some equity in the company, usually not 51%. Instead, Haru calls her a devil investor, both because of the fun wordplay on the technical term and wanting the controlling interest, and the fact that these two clearly, desperately want to fuck.
Oh my god! Just screw already!
Seriously?
In the sub, the translation of her response is excellent wordplay, building on the dialogue and her lust for Haru just from the word impish, which also adds to the whole divine infernal imagery from Haru. The dub, though?
So if you're not an angel investor, then I suppose you'd be considered a devil investor.
Or you could just call me a little devil investor.
Gentlemen, that was a fart.
My linguistic beef aside, after Kiri explains the contract of her investment, the next major dramaturgical flag comes from when Haru flatly states they aren't taking Kiri's money, but will use it instead to get an offer from someone else. Name-dropping Kiri's investment would be like pitting the Shark Tank hosts against one another for a better deal. And that's not art being larger than life.
Everybody knows by now, all businessmen are completely full of shit.
People do this all the time. The investment world is all about appearances is 100% accurate. Just look at all the speculation on AI-related stocks and their effect on the S&P 500 index. They do acknowledge there's just one problem with the idea. Without her publicly expressing her interest, who would believe two scrubs like them? If only there was a way to put her in a position where she can't deny it. Oh, look at that. Dragon Bank is conveniently hosting
A sex championship, eh?
No, damn it, Haru. An IT security championship. Seriously, dude. Go take a cold shower. A fintech institution throwing one of these contests isn't that far-fetched. Po-Nu-On is a real-life example going back to the early 2000s. White hat hackers, or folks that hack things not for personal gain, like black hats, but in order to inform the software owner of their vulnerabilities. In the case of Dragon Bank, or real-life's Po-Nu-On, It can also be for legal profit and fame. A recent Pwn2Own event doled out $1.3 million for finding exploits from Tesla vehicles, Google Chrome, to Adobe Reader. Which brings us to Dragon Bank's qualifying round, a Capture the Flag event also based on real-life rules. Imagine a whole host of categories, each covering a different kind of hacking topic. Think Jeopardy, but with more Mr. Robot. When Gaku notices some static in the introduction video, it leads to a flag, worth only a single point. Which is a reality check. Gaku admits that as a single, freshly graduated IT nerd, there is no way he could beat international teams with far more experience. So having 901 points a few hours into the competition as one person is actually impressive as hell. He could probably get a job offer with just that chip on his shoulder. And his strategy of only the hard problems for more points is sound. Lots of startup companies tackle annoying problems with novel solutions to the same end. Pay a few of your devs to solve big problems, and pay data entry people to fix the stuff that can't be automated. So, when Haru brings in a conference call with a slew of normies to solve those easy problems, that is an act of pure startup genius. Which brings me to my second issue with the English dub. This line,
Questions about vulnerabilities? Those are so classic. SQL injection, right?
I know it's technically correct.
The best kind of correct.
This initialism stands for Structured Query Language, but most people pronounce it SQL because of the history of the acronym that preceded it, IBM's Structured English Query Language. SQL injection is a valid reference to a form of hacking where, typically an internet form, doesn't wrap its input values in a parameter. So you can do some really nasty things like injecting code that says drop database or delete everything where a first name would go, and once you submit it, poof, the database is gone. So, unless there's a backup, let's just say hackers are The other hacking examples they give are fun. QR code redirection sending you to the wrong website, and hacking the maze boundaries both track. I mean, isn't that kind of the entire point of Baba Is You? But Haru's metagaming of the whole event is exactly the kind of thing I love to do. Why rearrange the code to spit out a song when you could just break down the point of the question? It's a code competition, not name that tune. Metagaming, using information from outside the question, can separate the winners from the losers. The 777-point question is another example. Since no other questions end in anything other than 0 or 5, barring that first 1-point question, you can tell who got it right by their score. Honestly, I'm surprised Haru didn't metagame that the flag's code was Jackpot 777. A little on the nose, don't you think? Kind of like Kaiju number 8's metamorphized character being named Kafka. But with that jackpot, they squeak into the second round, so it's heightened realism, but hey, real is real. Round 2 is where the fabric of reality starts to tear a bit, though. In this competition, it's not Jeopardy style, but attack-defense, meaning each team has a server that's riddled with security gaps, like Swiss cheese. I personally prefer sharp cheddar. If you get this joke, I really hope you groaned. My first reality-breaking observation is one even non-nerds can see. It's 1 versus 4 in Gaku and the other teams. Setting aside the 300% increase in headcount, every full-stack developer has their strengths. Being a programmer is like being a doctor. Yeah, there's some overlap between networking, database design, security, and so on, but you probably wouldn't choose to see a podiatrist for a heart problem. The second rupture of realism comes in 2 parts: Haru's Shinto shtick and the Insecure Network. Haru's wild Buddhistic prayer and exorcist staff are a ruse. His shiny version of the traditional wand is really aluminum foil, which can block Wi-Fi signals if used correctly. The used correctly is the operative bit. Would the aluminum powder and foil block the access point? Probably not. Also, since it's a server-based competition, odds are it would be a local area network. Yeah, LAN. That kind of LAN. So all of it would be hardwired, not use Wi-Fi. Haru's intent is to drive everyone to a secondary, unencrypted access point that appears to be legit. In reality, he snuck into the hotel and placed it himself. The anime does a great job at explaining why. Since the network is unencrypted, Haru could strip everyone's master password and just hand it over to Gaku. If no one realizes that's how they're compromised, they won't change it. This, by the way, is an idea straight out of Season 4 of Silicon Valley, the pineapple scheme from the episode Hoolicon. If you set aside that hotel security and the competition security exist, this plan is brilliant. Not just because, passwords, but because of how the competition works. You can only steal 5% of someone's points at any time. Percentages are dependent functions, so if you have more points, you have more to lose. And if you have less points, you should be trying to hack the biggest, easiest target in that order. Bing, bang, boom. So Kiri's henchman, Nagase, pushing the other teams to pick on Gaku was a bad move, since from last place, hitting everyone at once, with those stolen passwords to boot, is the easiest way to rocket to first place. And that's the end of episode 5. Did they win? Well, here's the timestamp to skip the spoiler, where I have an observation about why it's weirdly classist for Kiri to view Haru and Gaku as delectable fruit. As you find out at the start of episode 6, they're disqualified for Haru's schemes. But hey, it was never really about winning. It was about getting the attention of one of the Mark Cubans of the world. And while Ketowan isn't on the Japanese version of Shark Tank, he's got the venture capital they need in exchange for far less than 51% of the company. Episodes 6 and 7 are going to be their own video, so that's all the more I'm going to share right now. But yeah, Kiri viewing our boys as fresh fruit is weird. We already covered that she wants to gobble up Haru like Dandadan's Turbo Granny, but the whole thing reminds me of Death of a Salesman, when Willy Loman's all, "You can't eat the orange and throw away the peel! A man isn't a piece of fruit!" Given Salesman's commentary on capitalism and Kiri wanting to basically own Haru and Gaku, it works for me. Not saying it was intentional on the anime's part, I mean, it's a 75-year-old American play. But still, the global zeitgeist be zeitgeistin'. So, could a single hyper-fixated nerd beat out elite hackers? The answer still is, it depends. The rules of the competition, the support surrounding Gaku, the willingness of Haru to cheat, lie, and steal, all set up our Trillion Game boys for success. Is it realistic? Somewhat. Is it probable? Hell no. But then where would the fun be in that? Plus, it's almost like all that cheating and skirting the rules is some kind of foreshadowing for what might be coming later. You can watch Trillion Game on Crunchyroll to decide for yourself. Or, if you're more of a comic book guy, the first volume of Trillion Game is now available in English from Viz Media. For episodes 6 and 7, assuming I've lined up the manga chapters right, we're going to get into the world of venture capital and the corporate self-help industry. So if you like Simon Sinek and Tim Ferriss types, sorry in advance. If you're new to anime and want to branch out based on familiar Western media, I would start here. And the almighty algorithm seems to think you'd like this video in particular. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next sermon.